Colonel McCraw began his law enforcement career with DPS in 1997 as a trooper in the Texas Highway Patrol and DPS narcotics agent. In 1983, he became an FBI special agent and served in Dallas, Pittsburgh, Los Angeles, Tucson, San Antonio, and Washington, D.C., so he's been around. His assignments included, and there's a nice long list here, so listen. Supervisory Special Agent, Organized Crime Unit Chief, Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Inspector in Charge of Southeast Bomb Task Force, Special Agent in Charge, Director of Foreign Terrorism Tracking Task Force, Assistant Director of the Office of Intelligence and Inspections. And in 2004, Colonel McCraw retired from the FBI to become the Texas Homeland Security Director under Governor Rick Perry, where he served for 5 years. And then in 2009, Colonel McCraw became the Director of the Texas Department of Public Safety. Pretty big responsibilities, I think, that he's had over the past several decades. Colonel McCraw has a Bachelor of Science and Master of Arts degree from 2 different degrees from West Texas State University, and he's a native of El Paso, Texas. Would you please help me welcome Colonel Steve McCraw?
Thank you very much. And also thank you for reminding everyone I can't keep a job. Keep moving around. And, the good news is that it gave me an opportunity to meet a lot of people, see a lot of things over the years. And if you, I go back to 1977. Actually, I wish it was 1997 that I started my career. But 1977, you look at it from a threat standpoint. Back then, we were concerned about the proliferation of brown heroin and marijuana. And it was at the time. We never worried about cocaine so much. Got a little bit of cocaine going on in Miami. Started elevating. We saw the Colombians get involved, and not long after that, the Caribbean corridor, the Peru land bridge, and then it wasn't long until we saw the proliferation of cocaine throughout the West, and then crack cocaine. Over the years, we've seen these things. And one of the reasons that I've, of course, had an opportunity to go work for the FBI with our Secret Service brothers over here, Chief, is to work organized crime. Because well, there's La Cosa Nostra, the Sicilian Mafia, and Dragnet de la Camorra. Those were clearly organizations that were having an impact on the U.S. And there's certain advantages in terms of going after those organizations. And so I was blessed and had an opportunity to work those types of cases. But even as chief of organized crime in the Bureau, we saw the Mexican drug trafficking organizations elevate to a level we've never seen before. In fact, it's the only drug trafficking organization became an organized crime entity in itself, syndicate, that embraced terrorism tactics. And terrorism, as you know, it's used to coerce and intimidate, rivals, and certainly usually for doctrine and religion ideologies like Islamic extremism. In the case of Mexican cartels, they use it to support their criminal enterprise activities. And the depravity has no bounds. We talk about Mexican cartels. In fact, Islamic State, or ISIS, as some people call it, or ISIL, learned something, from how brutal and depraved the Mexican cartels are. They do it for profit. We talk about children, our most precious asset. What they do to the children south of the border is incredible. And our concern from a threat picture, we start looking at it from a Texas standpoint, risk is a consequence of threat, vulnerability, and consequence at the end. And when you look at all those, and you start looking at it, from a Texas standpoint, our most significant vulnerability is a porous border with Mexico, period. The reason the cartels have elevated and become the level of threat that they are is because they're able to operate between the ports of entry and on the ports of entry and move ton quantities of drugs and people, because people is the new commodity for the cartels. And the advantage of the people is that you don't have to process it, you don't have to grow it, you don't need ephedrine-based meth. You can simply, move them across. If there's a demand for especially in terms whether it's sex trafficking or forced labor. As long as there's demand for people in this country, they come. And the cartels make the money. And they make the money before they get across the river. And when they get across the river, and their business model now is to keep them cooped up in stash houses, either along the border or in sometimes even as they'll forward deploy them as far as Houston or San Antonio. And they'll keep them there and they'll extort them. They will not let them go until they get additional money from the family. Plain and simple. And so there is a concern that we've seen. So if that's our most significant vulnerability from a crime standpoint, we say that because the cartels now dominate the nation's drug market by 2, by 4. There's no question. Even in Canada, the most significant organized crime threat in Canada now is the Mexican organized crime cartels because of heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, and marijuana. Black tar heroin is awash in the Northeast, especially as they've tightened up on the pharmaceutical drugs and the Schedule I drugs that were being used. So people who were hooked on Oxycontin have moved over to heroin. So that's a major concern. We saw the use of black tar heroin in middle schools in Dallas, attacking our kids. Because again, their cycle, they don't care. Business is business. So from a public safety standpoint, there is implications. There's consequences of them being able to turn Texas into a transshipment center for drugs. For people, it's the same way. We get concerned because it's not just always the illegal alien that we hear about that comes across for a better life and bring their family and try to repatriate and work their job, service injury, whatever. There's also this concern that there's other criminals that aren't tied to the MS-13, we'll call it transnational gangs, or the Mexican cartels engaged in criminal enterprise conspiracies. They're actually stone criminals that come to the U.S. to seek, victims that they prey upon. And as long as they come in, what happens is very simple. Even if they're arrested, they do their time, they're extradited back to their country of origin, and that's a problem as well, depending on what country they're from. They come back in, like we see again and again. Whether we see a Border Patrol agent killed, he's trying to protect his family when he's out fishing, by someone that's been reported twice, or a girl molested when she's, 4 times, someone that's been deported 4 times, and we go on and on. In fact, if you look from a criminal alien standpoint, you start looking at the numbers, there's a substantial percentage of convicted felons that make up that population. And so that's a public safety threat. The other consequences, extortion, kidnapping. We call it the victimless crime, the crimes that aren't reported. Human trafficking, I mentioned before. Sex trafficking. There's 2 sides of sex trafficking. We've seen gangs move into that area because why? It's one of those profit areas that there's low risk and high money value from it. So your endangered, your runaways are targeted, or your juveniles on probation are targeted by gangs because it's so lucrative for them. The other part is international sex trafficking. And we had an investigation up in the Dallas area tied to Houston where we had 11 illegal aliens who have been operating the sex trafficking organizations. And how they do this is very simple. They recruit out of Mexico and Central America. One of the guys that young females and children will come to the U.S., they'll get them here, they'll pay for the smuggling fees, they'll be a domestic servant, or they'll be a nanny, and sometimes in the service industry. The first thing to do when they get here is they're beaten, they're threatened. Well, actually, they go back. They're debriefed first. They find everything they can find out about them at that point in time, including their families, where they live, and what villages they live in. And then they go back, and then they're beaten, they're gang raped, and they're compelled into prostitution. These 11 subjects that we arrested, we rescued 13 females. One was 21 years old. She was brought here when she was 13 years old. So that's the type, 2 of them escaped this life of just misery. They escaped. Unfortunately, what happened? They know where they're at. So they simply go back and threaten the family. One girl was, both of them ended up going back to the life of prostitution. And you turn, agents that special agents with DPS have worked narcotics investigations all their lives, all their careers. You see some stuff. You really see some really the evil side of some of these organizations and people. But I can tell you this: you do a wiretap on a sex trafficking organization like this, it'll make you cry. And so these are no longer victims. they're no longer criminals, they're victims. You're ready to change your investigation pattern or I'll say doctrine around. So now we got to identify them quickly and intersect them or interdict them with a trooper on the highway on a pretext reason for stopping so we can rescue them and get them away and identify as many as we can at that point. So that's some of the things that you don't see that. That won't show up on your crime stats, by the way, because when we use index-based crimes, and all that means is the Uniform Crime Reporting into the FBI, we report 8 index crimes. Those 8 crimes were selected back in the 1930s by chiefs of police to give a scan of the environment of crime. But today, crime is increasingly transnational, it's organized, it's discrete and non-reported, it's interrelated, and terrorism is disaggregated, is what we've seen in terms lately with the Islamic State and some of the movements of Sunni extremists in those areas. So what that, the challenge for the state of Texas is, well, what are we going to do? As long as the cartels have unfettered access, be able to move drugs and people between the ports of entry and on the bridges, then what happens is that they continue to make billions of dollars. We see that they repatriate that billions of dollars. The most significant domestic security threat to Mexico is the cartels. And they're being fed with the money because of the unending demand for these drugs and sex trafficking in the United States. And of course, Texas suffers because we have 64% of the border, and we have to operate and deal with 7 of the 8 Mexican cartels have command and control networks in our cities and along the border and operate. A new threat that I never thought I would have seen in my Washington, D.C. days. We lived in Northern Virginia, and the threat was always of the MS-13 and MS-18. That was a serious threat. They have a real problem, in Northern Virginia, in Florida, and Long Island with MS-13. We didn't have that problem in Texas back in '04. Well, today, we have a serious MS-13 problem here in Houston area. Never had it before. With the influx of Central American communities moving in and the migration route, because if you're a kid and you're from El Salvador, you're in MS-13. You have no choice. So you've seen some recent examples here that have been publicized, where you're a 14-year-old kid trying to get out of and refuse to kill your cousin because you found Jesus, and because you've taken a stand, and then the order and execution, it comes not locally, but from El Salvador, and they've got a 40 Glock that they can shoot him with, but instead of using a machete and whack this kid up. So there's example after example, and these are the types of things you don't see. It creeps up on you, and that's why there's a sense of urgency in terms of what do we do. And as long as individuals that come from countries with a known Al-Qaeda presence or ISIS present can come and move between the ports of entry undetected, that's a problem. That's a national security problem. So what's the state to do? I was talking to Chief back here a little while ago, and thankfully the state of Texas, with their governor, lieutenant governor, and our state legislature, the only ones that have invested state funds to do something about it, plain and simple. And one of the things we can't do, and I've talked to members and I tell people from other states, and they ask, well, how does Texas able to do it? I said, well, first thing first is that Texans aren't going to accept that it's not our job. We can't say, I can't go up to the state capitol and say, I'm sorry, Representative, it's not our job. We don't do that. Well, what we do is our mission is to protect and serve Texas. If that means that we have to deploy troopers around the state to conduct surge operations and saturation patrols, there's high clusters of smuggling to sustain that, working 12-hour days, that's what we do. That's our obligation. Take an oath to the Constitution of the state of Texas, and we work for the legislature and the government. And so that's what we've been doing since June 18th, really June 23rd of last year. We saw a huge influx of Central Americans, moving into and through the border area, and an exponential growth over the years in terms of top of 315,000 in that year, and that 38,000 in that month, coming across, and only 17% were those unaccompanied children. So, at the direction of the state leadership and the legislature, we deploy using what every chief of police knows, every sheriff, every constable knows. If you will, it's axiomatic, police physics. If you'll take patrol, high visibility patrol, and you'll insert it in high clusters of crime and sustain high visibility patrols around the clock in that area, so you break up the pattern, you will displace that crime at the minimum, but most often you'll see a reduction in crime. Works particularly well with smuggling, because smuggling is what? Smuggling is just simply make money. So it's a money-making business. And that's why we knew, even though there was unaccompanied children was being talked about, we knew that, yeah, that would work. We'd already done a surge operation the previous year to demonstrate the efficacy of it. And you shut down the Gulf Cartel, the Zetas, that are operating in that area. But the center of gravity for the nation in June of 2014 was Starr and Hidalgo County. And Rio Grande Valley had the busiest month, 38,000 illegal aliens that were apprehended. That's the most ever in the Rio Grande Valley history. And that is an unbelievable number. They had over 53% of the apprehensions for the nation's southwest border. Happened in 2 counties in Texas. So that's some of the challenges that we have. Proliferation of organized crime. I said before, you can't count it because it doesn't show up in a statistic. One thing we've seen is the cartels do. They recruit our kids, act as mules, to serve as scouts, to provide movement of drugs and transport on the bridges and off the bridges. And that is and move them into the gangs. And so they entice, they embrace this, and unfortunately this thing, we even worry about up in Houston, this thing called narco-cultura, where the cool kids now, glorify the lives of the cartels, the AK-47, and the butchery, and the beheadings. And then we worry about that when they've already lost a generation of youth in northern Mexico. When they're here trying to recruit and are effective in their recruiting using the gangs, that's a problem. To the organized crime piece in that regard. Gangs, I've never seen them collaborate the way they are today. We hear a lot about race relations and tensions. Well, not with the gangs. Never before. We've got a case here in Houston that was involved, a Gulf cartel case, but we had the Mexican mafia working with a Chinese gang, working with the Bloods, a blood sect, working with the Aryan Brotherhood. Right? How's that getting along? Yeah, and all money motivated. When the Mexican cartels imported ephedrine and made ephedrine-based methamphetamine, and they're using used to be super labs, it's more like factories right now, and use their existing network to pollute our communities and move it quite right across the nation. There's not a major city that doesn't have a Mexican cartel problem right now. And of course, the battle to secure the border is not 60 miles away, 100 miles away, 50 miles away. It's certainly not Washington. It's at the border. It has to be done on the river. You have to battle for it, and those with that military background understand that very well. Those in law enforcement understand that very well. The challenge is that when you have 1,254 miles, how do you manage to do that? If you look at it from a people standpoint solution, we talked about high saturation patrols and maintaining that around the clock, 24/7. Well, now you're talking about even when we're using tactical boats and aviation assets, now you're talking about somewhere about 80,000 people it would take to sustain that. Well, there's not that many police officers in the state of Texas. Okay? But what about technology? One of the things that we early on recommended, first of all, we don't believe, it's kind of a big government thing. We don't believe the government does a very good job with technology. It's the private sector. And if they've already done it commercially and they've developed it and operated, it's the way to go. Wildlife cameras. What, $300 a piece, $350, some of the high-end, motion detected. Well, right now we've got 2,000 deployed along the border. And it's the best technology that Border Patrol has. In fact, Border Patrol helped us install that in our high threat areas because they don't have any technology. And at the end of the day, we expect, troopers, Texas Rangers, and agents to be able, and we can. I can track every unit in the Department of Public Safety on this right now, and I can pull up any camera that we have, those 1,994 cameras that we have along the border, and our troopers can too. And what we've been doing is we did this initially, and we recognized it, and we said, hey, this is highly inefficient. We're sending an army of DPS troopers, agents, and Texas Rangers, and our tactical people in that area. We're moving aviation assets with state-of-the-art FLIR capability and doing NVG operations. We've got tactical boats that, who would ever thought DPS would have a Navy But, okay, and at the end of the day, I never thought it, and, but yet we do. In fact, we've got some, and if we're gonna, this is Texas, if you're gonna go, you can get in the water, you can put your troopers in the water, go up against cartels that, by the way, they shoot at us, okay, on more than one occasion, but they haven't shot at any one of our black and white boats, okay, and there's a reason for it. Six, 240 Bravo some machine guns, and most of our troopers have been there in Afghanistan and Iraq, some of our young guys on the run. Hey, we deal with the Constitution, they shoot at us, we're clearly authorized to engage the enemy, and we will, and make no mistake about it. And you have to take that type of aggressive posture when you're dealing with people like this. So how do you leverage that technology I talked about? And so you can be a force multiplier, so they can run, as opposed to deterring them because it raises the risk. And how do you do it to where you can actually, the risk becomes 100%? Because until you secure it 100%, and can prove it, by the way, it doesn't do any good if you think you got it. You got to be able to demonstrate it to the members of the legislature and to the public that we've secured an area. And it's got to be a team approach. It's got to be unity of effort. You got to have a unified command, and it has to be with a sense of urgency. And that's what we've been working towards right now. And oh, by the way, hey, don't ever blame Border Patrol for the state that we're in. They've been underinvested, underappreciated for decades, plain and simple. And they've got some outstanding professionals, and they want to do the job on the ground. And you can work with them on the ground, those immediate supervisors, and that sector chief, and that station chief. And right now, with our Texas Ranger Recon team, with our SWAT teams, our SR teams, our tactical boats, aviation assets, all things that the state legislature provided to us, and an additional $8.3 million plane coming online as well was just appropriated. So we want to keep an aluminum cloud in the air. And I mean that 24/7. And I can assure you this, and within 3 months, and I'm giving myself 3 months, and it's really more like 3 weeks, but I'm doing this just to recognize sometimes I get over there a little bit. I've got to give myself a little bit of room. We will have the first zone secured. When we look at zones, well, we talked about this last legislative session. Said, what's one thing, we can always seize those. And our troopers, we had one trooper this week was called, his regional commander called him a ball hog. Okay? He knocked off a vehicle with 850 pounds of marijuana, turned around and knocked off 28 pounds of methamphetamine, then another 16 pounds, 13 pounds of cocaine. So he had a heck of a day, that one trooper Picacho. That's the type of dope out there. But guess what? That doesn't do any good. I mean, we certainly make cases on the mules along those lines, and we always have to engage in criminal enterprise investigations and prosecutions to go after command and control networks in our major cities and along the border. But the bottom line is the only number that matters is 100%. That anything that moves across that river, north or south, is detected 100% of the time and is interdicted 100% of the time. Otherwise, it's not secure. Plain and simple. And you can hurt the cartels. You can force them to combat each other and cannibalize each other if you take the property away from them. If they cannot move across. And just right now, as we've tightened it up, nothing's coming across right now. In fact, I mean, it's getting boring for our troopers and our interdiction teams, but that's fine because we're going to expand. So we're going to focus on Zone 3. We'll move into 2 and 4 at the same time. We've got to have constant aviation. Why the aviation is important? It is for detection, for blind zones, but it's also important. The aviation is vital because interdiction aspect of it. And those of you in the military understand, you lock into somebody on FLIR, even daytime FLIR, they're not going anywhere. You got all day. You're going to catch them. And that's important, detecting them and then interdicting in that regard. And coordinating, almost like command and control from the air, and saying this is where they are, Border Patrol agent. Okay, you're over here. They're 2 feet ahead. They're 15 feet. Move this direction. And that's important. And the same thing at nighttime. There has to be an integrated approach. And we have to talk to each other. Means Border Patrol agents, we need to talk to troopers. We need the same network. We need to break the encryption piece. We've done that through MOU. And we can talk to Border Patrol agents. We did it before through aviation because all our pilots are supporting Border Patrol agents on the ground. But now we can talk agent to agent. We've also, this is the first time that we've done it, we've taken a trooper and put him in a Border Patrol unit. And so there's one in each sector, each subsector of the sector. So right now we've got 8 every day, 20, we were 24/7, by the way, so our troops work 12-hour days, or, they work a 10-hour day at the minimum, but, so we rotate, but we'll have at least 16, just right now, 16 hooked up with Border Patrol. And why is that important? Because not everything is a federal crime. It's a state crime. We got a perfect example the other day when we picked up on, or they didn't meet the federal requirements. Okay, it's not worthy to prosecute. A trooper and a Border Patrol agent came across the trail, took it to a stash house. Stash house was locked down, chained, and inside they can see two pregnant women were inside there. And keep in mind, there's no females that aren't sexually assaulted when they come across. So and they were able to rescue them and 10 others and arrest somebody, and they weren't going to prosecute that individual federally. Didn't meet the guidelines because they got so many to do. They got so much prosecution. That's why we prosecute the state. Pick them up, wrap them up, plain and simple. And they have federally it's a more difficult time with juveniles along those lines. So we can, again, about integration, unity of effort, integration of effort, team player, build that excitement, and then dare the cartels to come. Please come. We want you, because we don't hire anybody that didn't get out there that doesn't want to catch something. We get nothing but predators, type A's. You got to tell them what you want. You got to be careful what you tell them what you want, okay? And clearly, by empowering them with simple technology, so you know where they're at. And there's something to be said about knowing exactly where a person is or a thing is, and the GPS coordinates and a picture of it, and you can actually see it and know where it's at. And you can juxtaposition your position towards that. So it's an exciting time for our troops because in the past, what we've had to do over the last year is put up with the hundreds of scouts that they send across at us. And they recruit them out of the Houston and San Antonio and Dallas area. They pay them well. The river is aligned with scouts. And you'd think that the Rio Grande River is the sports fishing capital of the world, if you didn't know any better. They do a lot of fishing without bait down there in the Rio Grande River. And keep in mind, we've got to have a reason to stop somebody. So these scouts will sit there and photograph us. They'll mock us. And we'll know these are gangbangers. These guys are some tied to some very vicious gangs that do home invasions in that area. But when they're surveilling our troops, whether it's at restaurants, whether it's at the hotel, or whether it's at their observation post, there's nothing we can do unless we have a reason to stop them. It's a reasonable suspicion, probable cause. Have to see something. So we can't, so in effect, they use that to attack our seams. Well, now what we've done is we've said, look, with the legislature's blessing and resources, we said, okay, the strategy now is we shift from this very highly inefficient strategy of moving troopers from around the state and rangers and special agents and send them down there, and we'll take them from other parts of the state. But we do these surge operations around the clock. Well, the more efficient things, they already have the bodies down there. But even more efficient, and having the bodies down there is great already in terms of what the legislature gave us, another 250 troops, another ranger company, we'll permanently be able to sign that. But another part of that is that, by the way, if we go from like a car alarm or a burglar alarm, we know where the enemy's at. The enemy's a bad term, excuse me, but we know the individuals that we believe to have engaged in criminal activity are at. We can go directly to that. What does that do to the scouts? Neutralize them. We don't care. The scouts can take pictures of us, go get the bad guys. We don't care. And that's the point. Chief.
Would you do us a favor? Explain to everyone here, because they probably don't understand the corruption that is on the other side of the border in law enforcement that you have to deal with on a daily basis. Because you put up this line, but on the other side of the line, they're not helping us out because of the silver and lead.
Yeah.
Most people here don't understand that, so
Yeah, I mean they'll take the money or they'll kill you. Okay, and that's where the cartels are. There's no mistake about it. But Mexico has been systemically corrupt in government for decades. I mean, this is a institutional problem. Everything we tried in Colombia that worked hasn't worked in Mexico. Yeah. We've had vetted teams, polygraph teams that worked in Colombia, National Police. It doesn't work. In fact, the only groups we can work with that worked well with in Mexico is the the Mexican Navy and the Mexican Marines. And, you know, being Army-centric, we kind of hate that, but it is what it is. And every you know, whether it's the PGR or the OFI, everything they tried to create has been corrupted, and that goes back to, well, you know, you can't indict. There's no way you're going to be able to indict and convict your way into securing the border. It's just not going to happen. You got to recognize it, and that's why the emphasis is on this side, what we can do to secure it. Now, at the same time, the cartels, their tradecraft and corruption is not limited to the border. Chief, as you know, they moved under this side. One of the reasons why the legislature gave us another Texas Ranger company, because they do very well in terms of corrupting, you know, through money, and they've got a very systematic way of doing it. They don't do it. They do it more like the KGB than they do big city corruption. And that's an important aspect of that's just another byproduct of organized crime. So I'll let, yes, sir.
What's the Attorney General's office doing with the people you catch? Prosecute them all? Or?
Well, the Attorney General office, if you're talking about which Attorney General? I'm talking about the Department of Justice.
No, Attorney General in Texas.
Well, there's no violation for immigration in the state of Texas. No law against immigration.
Yeah.
There is a violation. There's human smuggling, and there's some provisions on human trafficking, and it's the district attorney that we work with in terms of prosecution.
Okay.
So the Attorney General doesn't have an original jurisdiction. It's the DA that we work with on those. And we work with the Attorney General on other aspects of it. I think we talked earlier about child crimes and internet crimes along those lines, and so they do have investigative authority, and certainly they can be invited in by any district attorney to prosecute.
Okay, let's please hold off the questions until the presentation is done, and then we'll have time for questions then.
Okay, the presentation's done. I get tired of listening to me after a while.
We have a lot of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
The big question that others in the nation and how can a state do a federal job? How are you coordinating? I know we're doing a good job down there, but what are you allowed to do, and is there confrontation? Because we're sure not getting the support from the federal government we think we're supposed to get.
Well, that's why I go back and said I would adamantly and vigorously disagree with anybody that says that Border Patrol is not working with us. Border Patrol agents on the ground and their immediate supervisors and their sector chiefs are. They're professionals. They know what their job is. They want to get it done. So we have no problem in terms of coordination. That's why we got troopers inside those green vehicles. You know, I'm not worried about that at all.
Well, I know they want to. My nephew was a Border Patrol agent down there, and he gave it up about 10 years ago because he said we weren't allowed to do anything. You know, and he got so frustrated. But legally, the support from the federal government says you can't work with Texas. So, I mean, how do you work with a interdiction from the federal government?
Well, we're just doing it. Plain and simple. We don't worry about what they do in D.C. Who cares? If they don't do it, we're going to do it, so why not do it together? And they know that. And quite frankly, there's not a Border Patrol agent that doesn't appreciate what Texas has done. And so it gets easier than you think. Now, it wasn't easy to start with, okay?
They don't get in trouble?
Well, you know, there's a level that you get in trouble. The only level you get in trouble with is that sector chief. The only one that they can remove that sector chief at any given time. But that's very difficult to do because that sector chief is coordinating, cooperating too much with local and state agencies. It's a hard sell that, you know, right on somebody's performance appraisal. You've been too effective and efficient, so we're going to remove you. Okay? Now, what they can do is promote them, okay, and get them out of there. But that's, you know, but I'll go back to it. That's why it's important to have that synergy. That's why it's important to take some of the things that we've learned in the discipline and that you've seen used in the military uses. A unified command. How do you be able to do that in law enforcement? Sort of like state Texas has got over 1,400 different law enforcement agencies, and every chief is a chief, and every sheriff's a sheriff. How do you get that, you know, synergy and interrelation? Well, we do it. We've done it. We've created a unified command, and it coordinates all the key functions, whether the ground, and the air, and the water, and we operate like it's an ongoing quasi-tactical operation around the clock. And so, yes, sir.
But do the district attorneys vigorously prosecute these kidnappers and drug dealers? I mean, are they putting them in jail for a long time? Or are they just kind of maybe ignoring it, not prosecuting
Well-
people, and they wind up going back?
Well, actually, they've actually paid for the Board of Prosecution, did some attorneys that work for the district attorneys along the border. We work very well with them from El Paso all the way to Brownsville. Whether it's Jaime Esparza out in El Paso, or these guys are great professionals and they want to do something about it. And it's been a great partnership that we've had. But there's two different things. There's prosecuting and then there's securing. And keep in mind, prosecuting is, okay, we've got the smuggling infrastructure we want to target. Those individuals doing home invasions, doing the stash houses, doing the extortions, command and control, movement along these lines. We want to prosecute every one of those individuals. Exactly. But guess what? We don't want them to be in a position where they can even get their drugs across or people across. So there is no case in that regard. So the part you can't, you need to do both because you want to degrade their smuggling network. But at the same time, you want to secure the border zone by zone. And we picked Starr County for one reason. Starr County has been the smuggling haven for Texas going back to the 1930s.
The sanctuary city being Houston, does that complicate things, make it easier for them, not easier for them to get lost
I mean,
in there?
the sanctuary city has more to do with probably the criminal alien issue in that regard. It doesn't do anything to secure. See, we've already suffered the consequences of having an unsecured border. Yeah, you're already dealing with it in your schools. So that has to be addressed as well.
Yeah.
And that needs to be, that needs to be keep hammering along those lines. And you need to go after those organizations that constitute the most significant threat, to the citizens of the state of Texas. And right now that tends to be because the alliance between the gangs, among the gangs, with the cartels, is where you see most of the violence and the flashpoint and the recruitment of kids. So from a DPS standpoint, we think that's where our special agents need to focus that around the state, on that piece of it. Yes, sir.
In your career, you've worn both the federal hat and the state hat. Is there a difference in interpretation? Case in point, I understand that to some extent the federal believes that if you get your feet wet, you're home safe to Mexico. We believe that if you get to the center, you're not even safe because of hot pursuit. Is there a difference in federal and state? In other words, is there a reason why we may not want the federal to really fully control ours rather than the state?
I think that we want the border secured. Simple. If it's secure between the ports of entry, for example, we're all better. So and I haven't met a legislature that would rather, that likes the idea of diverting state assets and putting it to a responsibility, a sovereign responsibility of the federal government. They would rather use it on infrastructure and other things. But nevertheless, if it's not secure, there's consequences. We've been told to use those resources that way. Yes, sir.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you're taking the border down there, but we've already got problems in Houston. Just in our area, about 4 months ago, they caught 7 Islam guys up by our house that killed a girl in Galleria. There's an area just south of Galleria that's predominantly MS-13. They wear the tattoos on their chest, on their head. They've already said, please stay out of our neighborhood, or we'll kill you. I mean, we see the MS-13, and we pick those guys. That's a uniform with the enemy as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. And then you have to go after them, and every command and control network, everyone that's tied to them, you need to go after them. And the best way, the most effective and efficient way to do it, over the years, the same model we used to take out the Cosa Nostra, and say in Mafia, use the enterprise theory of investigation, use these enterprise cases and prosecutions.
To the point now, we're going to arm ourselves in our own neighborhood.
Well, yeah, I think in Texas you can arm yourself anytime. Yes, sir.
Do you have any thoughts or comments to share about your relationship with the private sector, say the oil and gas industry, and citizen organizations to be eyes and ears and how they can help?
Well, clearly ranch owners in the South Texas Property Rights Association is an example. You've got landowners are immediately impacted, and the relationship that we have with them is important. So when they report, we come. That's clearly a value add. As it relates to others that we have, business community, frankly, we do more of that on the emergency management side of responsibility than we have with DPS and anything else. We recognize that the experts in moving commodities, in storing water, food, ice, and delivering is Walmart and HEB and Brookshire. It's not the state of government. It's not Texas. It's not FEMA. So we have close partnerships. We found out, after Rita, that, oh, by the way, why not use the private sector to address fuel issues. And we've got to set up a fuel cell within the emergency management in the bottom of DPS headquarters, State Operations Center. And guess what? We get all the, if you can just keep, just keep all the antitrust attorneys at bay, and which we had to do it, finally got them all. And right now, we've got all the big oil companies, they run the state fuel operations. Well, they get it done. So there's clear value in leveraging the private sector. We do in that area more emergency management than anything else. Yes. What? I'm sorry.
What one thing would be the biggest help to your operation of securing the border? A wall, changing laws, what one thing?
I mean, it's like anything else, it's resources. And of course, I've described that it's not just one particular resource. You need interdiction teams, you need detection capability, you need aviation assets is critical, and you need water or marine assets. So it's all of it, the above, and you need special agents to target those command and control networks of those organizations that are supporting. So it's kind of all, or it's not one thing, it's many things that need to be done. And that's the challenge that we have. So, yes, sir.
You know, it seems to me like these people are flaunting themselves with their tattoos and their gangs and just daring us to do something about them. And it seems to me that some of the top people in the law enforcement, well, prosecution areas of this state would rather go after somebody for on a residency question and put them in jail for 3 years than go after these gangsters. I'd really put them in prison and never let them out.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I haven't found a decent DA that wouldn't go after and put a gang member or a cartel member away. I mean, that's just my experience. And by the way, we'll also use the federal statutes.
Yeah.
Okay, we work with U.S. attorneys. We don't care as long as we can decimate them, eliminate them, and put them away as far as we can. And the quicker the better. And then it's that partnership thing. Sometimes the criminal predicate works better. Doing a federal, 1811 conspiracy investigation might work better from a prosecution standpoint. You get the DA and the AUSA, Assistant United States Attorney, together, and they decide, well, let's take it this way or that way based upon the statute. But at the end of the day, there's no question in terms you need a consolidation of information, identify those organizations. It's intel. I don't like you do it from the intel community or military standpoint. Know those organizations and target them where they matter most. And unfortunately, there's so many of them. There's not enough resources to go after all of them at once. So you got to prioritize and go after those that constitute the most significant threat. And for us, we've tiered the gangs. Tango Blast, Stone Tango Blast here, MS-13 here, the two top gangs in this area. Yes, sir.
You spoke about the influx of the cartels and the drugs, but you haven't mentioned anything about the influx of the Islamic influences coming across the border. Can you comment on that?
Well, going back to my FBI days when I was a FBI special agent in charge in San Antonio and found out, oh, by the way, there's individuals from countries with a known Al-Qaeda presence. We didn't have Islamic State or ISIS at the time to be concerned about, coming across the border and being detained. Well, that's a concern because we catch very few are getting caught over the years, only a very small percentage. So it's not about, can we link anybody that's come across to be a terrorist? Really, I think there's two cases, one Al-Shabaab out of San Antonio, another one Hezbollah up in Detroit. The question really is that we don't know how many have come across and already here. And it goes back to why you need to secure between the ports of entry. Because ISIS, right now, or the Islamic State, is clearly the most significant terrorist threat that we face. And this aggregation, because terror is all about creating terror. And, by the way, doing lone wolf attacks at soft targets terrorizes people. And you talk about living back in D.C. I think we're both back there, Chief. In D.C., when we had the snipers, two snipers, that nearly shut Washington, D.C. down. Now, statistically, you could win the lotto, before you got killed. You can win the lotto twice, statistically. But the fear, people would not go fill their tanks up with gas. They wouldn't go to the grocery store because of those snipers that were operating in that area. And that's the idea of a soft target, not with a Nairobi scenario, what they've done in East Africa. Some of those types of things concern us because that's what terrorizes them. Hit our schools, hit our malls and movie theaters, and they can be single attacks. And it changes the way you won't be allowing your kids to go to the mall.
Yeah.
If we, you won't allow your grandkids to go. So it can change our lives forever. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I have to ask you, did you know that the head of the CIA is Muslim Brotherhood Bennett?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah,
I mean, I get, well, I just, I don't.
But I mean,
Yeah.
that complicates things if that's the case.
Yeah, if someone's a part of a terrorist organization, the head of the CIA, that would complicate things, okay? I would agree.
Yeah.
But I just, I tend to be circumspect and evidence-driven. If I don't see the facts, I'm not much into conspiracies
Well,
except for the bad guys.
No, I did
Yeah.
hear it from a CIA person, but I can't really,
He was probably fired. Yes, sir.
I went to a Tea Party meeting last week, and they mentioned two Islamic churches in the Conroe area. They were both run by the Brotherhood.
That I don't dispute.
Islam.
Yeah.
I don't dispute.
Did anybody
Hey,
watch that? Did anybody look at that?
well,
Can I go to their church, see what they're doing?
I bet you can.
Well, I'd like to see it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Would
I
like
mean,
to see it.
I've been in a few, but the bottom line is this, is that,
Why don't we do something about it?
They're already
hey,
What can we do about it?
They're
well, I
here.
tell you what, this is our country, our constitution, it's founded on freedom of religion,
There you go.
and you know what, guess what?
Round for it.
Bottom line is that they have a right, okay, every religion has a right, and we recognize that. At the same point, anytime there is it doesn't matter whether it's a church, it doesn't matter what it is, if they're engaged in criminal activity, and terrorism is criminal activity, it can be targeted, and it is targeted. And I can't discuss ongoing investigations, will not discuss ongoing investigations, but I know that individuals have been tied to mosques, have been investigated, have been taken out, over the last decade. And you can't hide. It makes it more difficult. I can tell you that. It makes it a lot more difficult because the burden of trying to get electronic surveillance into a place of worship, the standard is very high and understandable. It's because we protect religion in our country. Yes, ma'am.
As you were pointing out, all those kids were coming over from Guatemala and all those different places last year. And I know we had a lot of them that went into centers here in Conroe and got adopted and all. I haven't heard anything more about masses of children since the last 6 months. Is there anything like that still happening?
They still come, but not like the numbers. When we were launched to do the operation, that year was 315,000. I said it was 38,000 a month. We drove the numbers down to about 13,000 a month. So that's of all illegal aliens in the Rio Grande Valley sector. And that goes back to what I talked about because we made it more difficult for the cartels to operate along those lines. And kids, if they come across, or family units, they give up. They're not trying to hide or sneak in that regard. The numbers have continue to be flat. There's upticks depending on when it happens. We keep hearing it. We've been hearing that, the sky's going to fall. They're going to keep coming in droves. And the push factor is the crime in Central America. The pull factor is maybe changes in policy here might pull, unaccompanied children to the U.S. We know all those factors are around, and all we can do is monitor them. But right now, thankfully, we haven't seen the influx, like the tremendous influx that we had, because you know what? Every kid that comes is a victim, all the way through Mexico. They're targets, and every female is raped by the time they get here. So that's why you hate to pull. Okay, you want to deter. You don't want them coming, because when I go back to what the Mexican cartels and really this cultural crime and depravity that exists right now in Mexico. Yes, ma'am.
So, two-part question. Do you have a lot of support from the sheriffs in the border towns, and how important is that support from those sheriffs? Seems like it would be
Yeah, it's any given day we're working tremendously well, or they hate me. Okay, it depends on the day. And it's just the nature of things and operations that go on. I think for the most part, we do have very good relations with, because we need to. And that's we've seen, and that's one of the great things about coming back to Texas is that, hey, people get along with each other. They find a way. That's our state legislature as an example. I've been up in Congress, man. Believe me, testified many times, and it's it's something about people wanting to actually get something done and do something makes a difference. So I've been very pleased with the cooperation and coordination. It doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. I don't make mistakes from time to time and don't hurt some feelings and vice versa. But you know what? You know, it's too important to public safety and homeland security to not cooperate. We have an obligation to integrate our efforts. And if we don't share information, it's not our information, it's the public's information. Okay? It may be secret, it may be classified, but we got an obligation to share it to maximize the impact and to work together. Plain and simple. It's a great force multiplier, as Colin Powell once said. Yes?
Have bullets, and what are the rules of engagement concerning returning fire across the border?
Do they have boats or bullets?
Bullets,
Oh, we got plenty of bullets.
you're allowed to shoot across.
Well, here's an example. We had Texas Ranger, two of our Rangers boat operating the pump house. We've got 6 shots fired at us, and we returned about 200 rounds. Okay? And I was asked by the media, I know it's criticized, you know, why so many? And I said, because we ran out of ammunition. And I say that because I don't mean to be nothing about it, but hey, you know what? Our men, you go down there and ride that boat, you're in an ambush situation. The Carrizo Cane and Salt Cedar, we're putting them in harm's way right there. And we're saying, make a statement. You know what? Hey, we're not afraid of you. And we abide by the same standards that we have on the river as we have over here. If they feel they're an imminent threat to their lives, they have the ability to use deadly force to neutralize that threat. Plain and simple. So we adhere to the same Constitution, the same penal code on the river as we do here. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, back to the border. How do the troopers, rotate? Are they from all over the state, or do you choose that?
All over the
different
state.
areas?
All over the state.
All over the state.
Yeah, we worked a
Y'all
5-day.
take turns, I guess?
Yes, ma'am. And there's as many as gone 22 waves. That wave is a week of 5 days, and they work 12 hours a day when they get down there.
Okay.
If they go on the boats, they work 13-hour days.
My grandson's down there this week.
We'll bless him.
If I'm asked, thank you.
We'll bless him. And don't tell them yet. We're going to move to 7 days a week. Okay. We can't keep that a secret. We think we can cut down some of the waves while we do that. Hey, the goal is to get out of that deploying bit. I mean, we were low in resources around the state everywhere we've been in. So it doesn't make it harder to be proactive and do high visibility patrols elsewhere. But again, it's about priority. The state legislature and leadership, and I'd say the people, said, hey, we want something done now. We want to stem the influx now, and that's what they've been doing. And we got an agency of high-performing, patriots who are selfless and dedicated. And even though they'll whine from time to time, because that's what they're entitled to, okay, they get the job done. And I'm very proud of what they've done. It's kind of like responding to a hurricane for over a year. With that same tempo, that same battle tempo that you have to have, and you have to be, when you go down there, you have to be engaged because the enemy they've got scouts and the types of things that we have to deal with. So. Yes, ma'am.
I have 2 questions. One, you hear all this stuff about the Border Patrol having to be so many miles off the border, and they can only work on the highways, and I've heard all kinds of things. Is that true? And the second question is, what happened to the Big Bend being able to, float down the river on the Rio Grande down to Big Bend? That was a wonderful thing to do, is that you guys used to do that.
Hey, you're probably safer in Big Bend than many places, just simply because where the trafficking patterns are right now. But it is what it is. Anything in Mexico is dangerous. We get asked. I know I get beat up every year when we tell, teams, hey, don't go to, on spring break, don't go to Mexico. I mean, I get lots of hate mail from very high levels of the government of Mexico when we do that. But I wouldn't let I would tell the same thing. I tell the same thing to my kids and my grandkids. Why would I not say that to every Texan? I mean, the parents have a right to know that I don't care if you're in Cancun, I don't care if you're in any part right now. Hey, is not a good time to go to Mexico. The other part of it, from a Border Patrol standpoint, no, we work right on the border with them. And now I'll tell you, this is a challenge because you'll have congressmen that will want their Border Patrol up on what? Canada, okay? Well, I mean, that's a real problem. We have so many Canadian cartels, okay? Right? So it goes back to they only got so many resources and the ability to deploy where the biggest threat is. And hopefully over time they'll have the infrastructure that they need. But in the meantime, And the Texans are very, they expect something done right now. And of course, there's no reason we can't do it if we work collectively together. And we're cheerleaders for our Border Patrol agents and the sheriffs and the local police. And that we're not, ball hogs in this regard and get the job done. What right looks like is that we get a momentum going on this tempo of certifying zones that are secure and start crushing the cartels, forcing them to cannibalize each other. That's what right looks like. Then you get a sense of excitement on this side for our troops, and it just builds on itself. And the American public's not going to, if we succeed and prove you can do it, why can't you do it elsewhere? Whether it's the Tucson sector, Yuma sector, El Centro. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, how long can we sustain, the state sustain this present course of action to keep us protected?
Well, right. Well, of course, that's a policy decision. How much the state's willing to spend on it is really a matter of the legislature to determine, and the return on investment, whether it's worth it, is really a job of the legislature and the leaders of the state, not for us. Us is just we will sustain we will do what we're asked to do, as long as we're told to do it.
I just wonder what happened if they said, okay, y'all done a good job, come home now.
Then that's exactly what we'll do.
I know that, but what's gonna happen to, go back to what it was, hopefully there'll be something else in place by then.
Yeah.
Because maybe with a new administration or something.
Yes, I get hung if I start talking that. That's none of my business. Well above my pay grade, yeah. That's for the citizens to decide.
Are we building any walls in Texas?
There have been some that built. The best place to build walls or fences is around large urban interface areas. Tijuana and San Diego is a perfect example. El Paso, Juarez, because you don't want them jumping a fence and jumping into. It's too difficult, the task for Border Patrol. So you need it there, but you can't just build it and leave it alone. You got to still be able, because they'll climb under it. They'll end up this building material in Mexico if you don't watch it. Okay, you got to, and we've got pictures on these wildlife cameras that bring it up ladders to move things over. So you got to also, the end game isn't just you got to be able to.
It always slows them down.
Yeah, we don't want to inconvenience. Exactly, we don't want to inconvenience them only. We want to be able to prevent them from coming. Yes, sir.
You said you need resources. What percent do you have of what you need? How much does it cost us annually? And are you sending the bill to Obama?
No, I think the governor's been doing that for some time, and the legislature has talked about that, and I think we've even sent a letter at one point in time on the money. Right now, this session, I think the LBB has said that the state legislature has allocated over $800 million to border security, and that's not chump change. Okay, that means Texas taxpayer money coming from somewhere else being allocated to assist in amplifying the security at the border between the ports of entry and address some of the command and control problems we have, or criminal problems we have throughout the state as well, in large areas. And you mentioned it earlier, MS-13. What are we doing here about MS-13? They give us money to do something about that too. Yeah, I'd rather not comment on that, okay? Because all I can do is get in trouble, okay, in terms of sufficient.
You can always use
Yeah,
more.
we will work with the resources that we have, and we've never been in a better position or a better posture to do something, to move the game. And what we've been doing is this: we've been saturating the area, raise the risk level to deter, and while deterring, we interdict. That's not, that's well and good. What we haven't done, and we've been measuring things like how much drugs we've seized and how many people we apprehend. But we got to get away from statistics like that, that when the seizures go up, you claim success. When the seizures go down, you claim success. You can't have it both ways, okay, unless you can demonstrate that you've actually increased the detection and interdiction capability substantially so that the numbers are going down because they can't get across. And now moving to this actually securing it in a way that you can prove it is the challenge. It's never been done before, never. So, yes, ma'am.
Is it true that a lot of drugs are coming through because of NAFTA, because they can't, look at every truck, they only do so many, and that there's drugs coming through.
Correct, yeah, and corruption on the bridges. But you move that much truck, tractor, semi-trailer across and cargo up to the 35 corridor or elsewhere. And if you look at Laredo and El Paso, they're different than Rio Grande Valley. Most of the smuggling on the truck side in El Paso comes across the international bridges.
Yeah.
That's just the way that works. That's why Sinaloa cartel and the Juarez cartel fought so violently for control of those bridges. And of course, that's a different type of problem. It's a problem, but it's a different type of problem. You know, what we've been focusing on is securing it between the ports of entry,
Right.
where people come and where drugs have been coming. And you know, that's the key piece to it. At least you're forcing onto the bridges, it increases your chance of seizing it if it's drugs. Very hard to bring people across a bridge.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Is that it?
Question over here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Is there one command for the Mexican cartel?
Is one command? Yeah, for us, what DPS has done, our commander is Jose Rodriguez. He's our regional commander. We said this mission is so important. He's going to be our incident commander. He serves as the incident commander for Operation Strong Safety.
For the cartel?
No, he works for us.
They have one.
Pardon?
They have one.
Yeah, they got many. There's 8 cartels right now. The latest they split up. Joaquin Chapo Guzman just escaped prison,
Yeah.
and so it looks like they sometimes they work together, sometimes they don't. And I would say right now what we're seeing is a trend towards them working together more, which is not good for us.
Right.
It's good for the violence in Mexico. It's bad for the criminal enterprise activities in the U.S.
I asked you whether there's one command in Mexico for the cartel.
Yeah, and I just thought I'd address that. There's multiple ones.
Yeah.
Whether it's Joaquin Chapo Guzman, the Sinaloa cartel, whether there's many commands within the Gulf cartel. There's 2 warring factions, Reynosa, Matamoros. You got the Zetas. It has, you know, Z, Marino, 1 or 40 has probably got it. But every time you cut one head off, someone takes their place. Yeah.
Well, you use the cartel as a whole. You know,
No.
we're talking about-
No, there's multiple heads and there's multiple cartels right now. And within those cartels, there's many factions within those cartels.
But they're working together.
How can they move themselves so fast, so coordinated? They don't have some kind of a.
Because they own territory. For example, the Gulf cartel owns the Gulf corridor. The Zetas own the 35 corridor. Okay, you've got Vicente Carrillo Fuentes who operates in the Juarez as well as the Sinaloa cartel. You got La Familia works out of Michoacan. They work that Dallas kind of corridor in that area and have agreements with 2 of the cartels. So they collaborate, number 1. Or if they don't collaborate, they own that territory and you don't come in. If you come in, you know, it's by threat of violence.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we know so much, who they are, where they live, what they do. Let's go get them.
Yeah, that's a policy decision.
What's the problem?
That's a policy decision. Yeah, you know, I guess you could, what you're recommending is a warhead on the forehead type of policy. That's, again,
They're attacking us, it's attack them.
that's a policy. What are you asking me for? And we implement. And I can tell you this, we don't have the authority to go into Mexico, and we won't be going into
They're coming
Mexico.
over here.
No, I'm gonna tell you, the Texas Department of Public Safety is the only one I can speak for. We aren't going across that Rio Grande. Okay? And, oh, by the way, we will strictly adhere to the Constitution. We play by the rules. Cartels don't, but we do. Yes, sir.
Colonel McCraw, we want to thank you so very much for what you do.
I don't do anything I second guess for a living. It's what the troops do, I can assure you. And I'm blessed what they do every day. They'll risk their life for you and your family and everyone's family, and they're honored to do that. So I'm very lucky to be in my position.
No, you are a role model. and you are, we do thank you very much. You are a hero. You are a hero. We consider you. And we are so, it was, this is a dream that I was able to finesse things, and through Representative Keogh is the one who contacted Colonel McCraw's office, and we've been talking to them for a number of months, and we thank you for taking your time, and this has probably taken you a little bit away from what you do to come here, but you have informed us well, and we are so grateful. And I do want to give you some. This is a little token from our organization. It's an "In God We Trust," the official motto of the United States. It's a stamp.
You can put God in the word and use it in government. That's great.
We want you to use it.
I certainly need it.
We want you to
Great.
use this.
Great.
This will be awesome in your office. Your secretary can use it.
Believe me, I need it.
And we do. We are so dependent on the Lord for our safety and for yours, and we pray for you and your men. And we're grateful. We're very grateful.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
And the state legislature, what they do to help us
Well, you
succeed.
know what he
So,
said? My husband went down here and traveled with you,
yes,
and he said that we're in that boat, he was in the boat and he drove the boat. He goes, when they see us, they split. Because they know we're going to be back.
they've not fired one round at those black and white boats.
That's right, they're scared to
That's
death.
awesome.
Now we wouldn't let the representative fire the machine gun though. we have rules. Okay.
You sure want to.
Well, and another thing too is Colonel McCraw has been so gracious to invite and to take the legislators around and show them what really is going on. And I have heard from numerous legislators that we have here that you've been doing that. And we appreciate that too, because that's how they know what they need to be doing with the laws that they're writing the bills.
To get you more money.
Well,
Yes, we need to get
Yeah,
more.
well, hey, Texas gets it. Texas state legislature gets it. And our Texas law enforcement partners, chief, they get it, and they understand the importance of it. And you know what? Most importantly, our citizens get it. You get it, and thank you for the support for our men and women. Thanks a lot.